The weather map looks still like winter from pretty much coast to coast. We have extreme cold weather warnings covering a number of states from the northern plains south into Texas. Winter storm warnings are up from Kansas to Kentucky. Winter storm watches for parts of the Delmarva Peninsula, Virginia, and North Carolina. There's a shock. And we're still blowing away in the Northeast behind the weekend snow, ice, and rainstorm. And we've got cold air for the rest of the week. We're going to talk all about that tonight on the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast, which you can support very easily simply by doing your Amazon shopping using our referral link, which is pinned to the top of the chat board. It's also on the description to this podcast. Just use the link, do your shopping. Amazon throws us back some coin for sending you there. And the best part about it is it doesn't cost you 1 cent. So the only effort you will need to make is to actually click on that link. And we appreciate those of you who have, or those of you who will consider shopping on Amazon being via the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast link on the chat board. Okay. So I knew the day got off to a good start for me because I got Wordle in one. So I was very. Actually, I use the same starter for those who play Wordle. I actually use the same starter word every day. So it was just a matter of time before they got around to mine. And anyway, it was a good day. You you got to be tough. You know, one thing I always find, I always found, and I find that here too, is you know you get all sorts of different precipitation, and you get snow, and it lasts for however number of hours it lasts, or if it rains and it lasts for however number of hours it lasts. But when it's windy, and it's windy for days and days and days, that can be so exhausting. And that's the way it pretty much looks up your way in the Northeast and Northern Mid-Atlantic states. It might ease off it's going to ease off from the peaks, but it may be windy for a good chunk of the week.
Yeah, Renata was saying this morning she didn't have a good night's sleep last night because she said the wind kept me up for much of the night. And it was howling, Joe, absolutely howling out there. And the funny thing is also is that I take the dog out last evening and I'm walking out and saying, this ain't so bad. Took him all the way down almost to the end of the driveway, and then all of a sudden, all at once, it was like, I said, what the hell am I doing out here?
Yeah, it was windy here. Actually, it was windy here yesterday, and it was cold this morning. It was 24. It's 35 now. We only got to 42. It was so cold for the month of January. Then we just had a handful of days where we were in the 60s and got up to 70 degrees, and then it gets like this, and you're just no, you don't want it anymore. So, I did notice today, Joe, by the way, the 18Z NAM is playing games again.
Yeah.
And I think the SREF may be playing games again, but I'm not buying this, what they're selling. If there was one global model that went along with it, I would, say, okay, maybe I should take a look at this a bit closer. But I mean, this thing is going to go to the south. Uh, Southeast Virginia, northeastern North Carolina are probably going to do pretty well with all of this with snow. So is the area from to the west going back toward Kentucky and Missouri and uh, Kansas and so on. But the only thing would say is maybe there might be some nuisance snow showers on Thursday because the upper low is going to be moving across and traveling close by. Maybe that sets off a couple of snow showers here and there, but I just can't see anything else from it for at least up that way.
One of the local TV weathercasters issued a first alert day on Thursday, and I said, "For what?" Then he showed what you just mentioned, the 18Z NAM, showing like 2 and 3 inches over parts of Long Island, and even up where I am, there was some accumulating. And I'm shaking my head. I'm saying, "So, what is he doing? What he's." You're absolutely right. All of the models, including the NAM, the 12Z NAM, I'm talking about the primary runs, all of
Right.
them Every last one of them, the NAM, the European, the GFS, the Icon, the Canadian model, all of them shoved that storm off of the coastline, well off the mid Atlantic coast by Thursday morning, and pretty much missing us. And I said, I actually, I didn't put out a forecast. I put out like a statement on my Facebook page today saying, if you want snow, go to Norfolk, Virginia, go to
Right.
the Delmarva Peninsula, go to parts of eastern Virginia. You're not going to get any of that up here. I mean, I know
Right.
I'm going to break a lot of your you snow lovers' heart. And then I said, all right, I'm not going to totally break. I'll say, well, there's always a chance. There's always a chance that something may change at the last minute. But then I added the disclaimer, but the odds are long that is going to happen. I'm
I'll
pretty
tell you the one. I'll tell you the one way. There is one way that you get a surprise on Thursday, and it will have nothing to do with the coastal low directly. But sometimes this happens where the upper low in a situation like this, the coastal low goes out, the isobar gets pulled back west, and you get a little surface development with the upper low that will be on, further, much further west, obviously. None of the models are showing that. Given that there's the upper low in play here, that would be the only way that you could wind up getting either some nuisance snow showers or maybe a surprise couple of inches. But I certainly would not put that in the front of my forecast. I mean, we say it here on the show because it's our show. We can say what we want, and I'm just sort of speculating out loud. That would be the only way that you could wind up with something on Thursday, and you're not going to really, you know, I don't know that you would really see it until maybe Wednesday or Wednesday night, if that were going to be the case. And right now, I'm not seeing anything that supports that notion that you could have, a bit of the ocean low goes out to the east, and then the upper low kind of pulls the isobars back westward, and you get a little bit of a low that develops just offshore and a little bit of precip that develops offshore. But we're talking a very, very long shot here, okay, and not something I would bet on.
And it looks pretty much that if we don't get anything out of that system on Thursday, either peripherally or directly or whatever, it's going to be dry here, probably right on through this week and right on into the upcoming weekend, which I might point out this weekend's the last weekend of February. The month is
Yes.
really flying on by, and to add salt to the wound to all of you who are winter weather lovers. And I mean, this week is going to be very cold. Need I tell you, tomorrow the core of the cold air is going to be pretty much over this part of the country. We're going to be looking at temperatures well down in the 20s, even for a high temperature, well down in the teens and single digits tomorrow night. Chill factors below zero, as will be the case tonight. All of that cold air and no storm or weather disturbance really to work with it. And then when we get to Friday, the temperatures will go back above freezing. And when we get to the weekend, it looks like temperatures are going to be climbing back up through the 30s into the 40s. In fact, by next Monday, I could see temperatures locally in the low to mid 40s, which is a tad above normal for this time of the year. So, a nice warming trend coming by the weekend and early next week after a frigid week this week. And again, unless things change, it looks like we could have dry weather right straight on through the week and on into the upcoming weekend.
Eric Donato, thank you for hitting super chat. That your name I don't recognize on the chat board. So if you're new, welcome aboard, and glad you're here. And thank you for the hitting the tip jar. And also we have Diamante Roberson hitting the tip jar tonight. Thank you for hitting super chat. He's up in snowy central New York. The back edge of that storm between the precip on the backside and the uh, some of the lake effect stuff that's going on, plus the snow that's on the ground, plus the screaming 50-mile-an-hour wind gusts, really creating havoc in upstate New York. Lots of car accidents, uh, blizzard-like conditions in some places. It's been a pretty rough day in parts of upstate New York with all of this, and we'll show you a few things on the radars and so on in just a moment. I got some pictures from Chuck Cardillo, who's one of our regulars here on the chat board. And I think I have some pictures. Yes, I do. Reset them. And here we go. So this is his the snow where he is up in the Catskills now. He's about 3,000 feet above sea level. So he's got the elevation working for him, but the snow is piled up to his deck. There's ice on top of that as well. So he had to shovel out the snow around the gas tank so that he could get a propane delivery, and he got it all cleared. So that's good for you with the cold air that's going to be with us all week. And I also got um, Joe Grasso sent me this picture of a friend of his up in Fulton, New York, where they got 3 feet or 3 to 5 feet of snow, depending on where you are, and 3 feet of snow and 5 to 6 feet of snow drifts. So for you snow lovers out there, okay, you need to go, up in upstate New York, and you get where the lakes are. You just kind of tell the real estate person, look, I want to live in the snow belt, okay, and she'll look at you probably sideways, but might be able to find you a cheap house because living in the snow belts, I think people who live in the snow belts in upstate New York certainly live there by choice.
It's incredible, isn't it? I'm sure that that part of New York State, in fact, I know that that part of New York State is a very lovely place to live in during the summer months, late spring, summer, and into early fall. It's just you have to put up with this during the January and February period when you have to deal with all of that snow. And by the way, we did get early this morning, Joe. Looked out the window and I said, "We have flurries. We have snow showers. What's going on here?" And I was not expecting that. But then we looked at the radar and we saw there was one thin ribbon of snow which extended all the way down from Lake Ontario. The winds were, as I said, roaring out of the northwest. And so literally we had a stretched out snow shower or ribbon of snow that extended all the way back up into the snow belt area and made it just into my neck of the woods to allow for a little flaking earlier today. And then when the winds turned more out of a westerly direction, that area of snow kind of lifted to my north and out of our area. But sometimes when you get these fierce winds of 40 and 50 and even 60 miles an hour, sometimes when you get that, if the winds are blowing just the right way, even though the models don't indicate that you're going to get any precipitation, you can get precipitation from the Great Lakes area, and that's exactly what happened this morning.
Brandon Doherty bangs the tip jar. I'm feeling way better. Good, but you said you had COVID last night, you and your wife. Sleep is not overrated. I put out a first call map down here. Good luck. Hopefully, it makes it far enough north. You look at some of these models, you wonder whether it's even going to make it up to southern Delaware, but we'll see. Chuck Cardillo, thanks for banging the tip jar. Kenny Salerno, thank you for hitting super chat tonight. So let's get started here. By the way, welcome to everybody on the chat board, and for those of you watching in the background, or maybe you're new to the show tonight, welcome to the Joe and Joe Weather Show podcast. We're here Sunday through Thursday at 7:35 p.m. and the occasional Friday and Saturday when there's a storm around, like we've been on Saturdays the last 2 Saturdays. I don't think we're going to be on this Saturday. Subscribe to my YouTube channel because I only need a handful more to get to 15,000. And turn your notifications on so you don't miss us. And of course, if you like the show, bang the like button because we love, love, love when we get to 100 likes. We like it even more when we get to 200 likes. So the Christmas tree is still up here with regards to what the National Watches and Warnings map looks like. We still have some wind advisories and some high wind warnings up in the Northeast. Joe, it's this kind of thing with the wind. I mean, the technicality of what's the wind advisory or what the high wind warning is. It's still going to be windy overnight and howling at times, and the same for Tuesday. The advisory being taken down to me doesn't make that much of a difference.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. I
It
mean,
does.
like, and it's interesting that, initially here in the tri-state area, we were under a high wind watch, and then they changed that to a simple wind advisory. And yet we still ended up getting winds which I think fell into the high wind criteria of 50 and 60 miles per hour. So maybe they should have changed the high wind watch to a high wind warning instead of downgrading it or diminishing it to a
Yeah,
wind advisory, which meant winds would get no higher than 50 miles an hour.
I didn't quite understand that, to tell you the God's honest truth. I mean, it was left up. Uh, Mount Holly had it up for the counties it handles in New Jersey, and they left it up. And it was up in eastern Pennsylvania. It was up in upstate New York. I didn't understand last night why Saturday night or whenever they made the decision to opt to go from the high wind watch to the wind advisory along the coast. But you know what? Somebody decided that the highest wind gust was going to be 49 instead of 51. So, or whatever the criteria is. So it don't matter. It's gonna remain windy for a while. We have lake effect snow warnings in north central New York.
101.
Yes.
Yes.
And we have a few winter weather advisories left in upstate New York, and also a few left up in northern Maine. Storm warnings are up for the coastal waters. What is that blue area? Oh God, they added, don't tell me they got some other weird advisory or something. What is that? Uh, oh, it's a heavy freezing spray warning. Okay. Just wanted to check. Winter storm watch is up for much of the southeastern half of Virginia and the southern portion of the Delmarva Peninsula, and pretty much all of the eastern half of North Carolina, right out to the coast. We've got winter storm warnings in Kentucky. Heck, the poor folks in Kentucky had to deal with severe weather, massive flash flooding this weekend. Okay. Massive flash flooding. Now they've got winter storm warnings up right behind it with bitter cold air that's come in on the backside of this. I mean, this is really, you know, piling the punishment on for that poor state. Also, winter storm warnings up for much of northern and western Tennessee in the central and western half. Some advisories up in the northern part of the eastern half. Advisories in northern Mississippi, winter storm warnings for the northern half of Arkansas, the southern half of Missouri, southern Illinois, southernmost Indiana, western and central Kansas, except the northernmost part of the state, and northern Oklahoma. And of course, that blue. I mean, this is bitter cold air that we're talking about. We're talking about low temperatures that will eventually. I looked at some of the Wednesday night forecast lows up here in the northern plains, 15 to 25 degrees below zero. So we're talking cold. We've got winter storm warnings up in Montana, up in northern Idaho, all the northern Rockies, actually, and a few counties in central Colorado. So definitely, this is a winter look. And as we check out the satellite loop tonight, there's not a whole lot going on from the standpoint of precipitation, at least not yet. You're starting to see the feeder moisture coming in into Kansas and Missouri. That's going to start up the developing snow in the next 24 hours or so. And as the energy from this starts to drop southward, and of course, the old storm is now in Atlantic Canada, and it's still rotating. And you can see there's an arm of clouds that goes from, the low center looks like the upper low center looks like it's somewhere between Nova Scotia and Newfoundland, but there's a hanging trough that's coming back around. Those clouds are going to be moving north to south. That is part of the problem with respect to this next storm system coming out, because it's going to basically cause it to be suppressed. The jet is never going to be able to completely sweep around to bring this storm northward up the east coast. So the ingredients are on the map to suppress that. You can see that will be suppressing this storm, that the next storm system that is getting ready to form in the southern plains and then eventually drop down into the Gulf of Mexico or the Gulf of America. I mean, or the
And
Gulf of or the Gulf of whatchamacallit. Let's call it that way. This way, both
Let's not
sides would be upset.
let's not tempt fate here.
Yes.
I in a lot of my discussions recently, I've been simply like, for example, I said a storm near the Louisiana Gulf Coast. They can't do anything to us with that.
Yeah, that's right. I just say the Gulf coastal states.
I'm
Um,
sure somebody in the administration. Well, we took care of the Associated Press. Let's take care of Joe and Joe now. They're not listening either. You know, it's
oh, look, if only then we get attention, and then our viewership would skyrocket.
yeah, exactly.
Yes. You remember, the only thing worse than being talked about is not being talked about. That's Oscar Wilde said that.
Well, it's the old saying is, when somebody said, "Aren't you upset that I'm going to write a bad story about you?" And he says, "As long as you know how to spell my name right, that's."
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. All right, here's the radar, and you can see what's coming off Lake Ontario. There's some very heavy snow squalls that are coming in. And by the way, this is the kind of weather where when you look at the radar, and oftentimes when we see precipitation coming, and you look at these areas, and you look at the grayish blue areas. A lot of times the snow is actually not reaching the ground. But when you have bitter cold air that you're dealing with, I guarantee you, if we looked at observations in southern Indiana right now, it's probably snowing where the radar has these echoes that normally would be Virga. And the same will apply in upstate New York. So you're seeing these streaks that are showing up here and there. And the other problem, of course, is the fact that you've got these strong winds and they are just it's been snowing there pretty much since yesterday in upstate New York, and the wind is just creating wreaking havoc, blowing that snow around, and as I pointed out earlier, a number of accidents all over the place on the thruway, on some of the other main roads going through central New York. It's just been a real mess. Here's the stuff in the Midwest that's starting to form in northern Kansas and Nebraska, northern Missouri into Illinois and southern Indiana. That area is going to expand in the next 24 hours. We've got also some snow going on in Montana, where we have winter storm warnings up, and various areas of snow here in Idaho and in the Cascades of Washington and Oregon. Nothing really to worry about as far as the Storm Prediction Center is concerned, except for tomorrow. There's a small area of marginal risk and a smaller area of 2% tornado risk that shows up in southeast Texas as well as in southern Louisiana ahead of that new storm. And here's the WPC's precip forecast. So we went from getting almost an inch of liquid now down to just a few hundredths. And I think this is a 7-day forecast that carries us into next Tuesday. That may be a tad generous with those few hundreds. Most of the Northeast actually is not going to see much except for those lake effect areas. And then you see the precip bulges in southern southeast Kansas and southern Missouri. That's going to be all snow, half to 3/4 of an inch of liquid there with high snow ratios. By the way, the snow ratios are going to be like 15 to 1 or 18 to 1, and the same holds as a quarter of an inch of liquid through Kentucky into West Virginia, and then you get a half to 3/4 in eastern North Carolina with a quarter of an inch more in the central. But that will be enough to put down 4, 5, or 6 inches of fluffy powder. And the Gulf Coast, we're looking at a half to 3/4 of an inch from Georgia all the way back into southeast Texas, with heavier amounts in southern Louisiana on the order of maybe a couple of inches, and heavy precip up in the Pacific Northwest. So I don't think there's really too much here as far as you know this next system. I think to me it looks pretty straightforward. Uh, you've got this big cold high, the gradient in the northeast and mid-Atlantic states, northern mid-Atlantic states, still pretty tight, although it relaxes somewhat. And you can see how this big cold air mass is just suppressing again everything to the south. This has got to be what, the fifth or sixth time that we've had a situation. I'm going back to the watches and warnings map where we've had winter storm warnings, west to east orientation from Kansas to Virginia. I mean, it's got to be the fifth or sixth time in this winter that we've seen this happen. And it goes to what I've said many times, which is every winter, if you could figure out what the primary pattern is going to be, that's what happens pretty much all the way through the winter months. And this winter's played out exactly that way.
Yes, as I said a while back, it kind of reminds me again of the winter of 72, 73, where we had many storms pass just to the south of New York. It was a very frustrating winter. We've done a little bit better, however, as compared to 72, 73. At least Central Park has about a foot of snow that they've recorded. In 72, 73, Central Park only had about 3 inches of snow total for the entire season. And yes, there were a couple of big storms. I remember I showed the map of one in February of 73 where, the Carolinas got dumped on with like nearly 2 feet of snow. But, that was the pattern then. And it's the pattern this year seems to be about the same. All the storms, all of the snow seems to be passing underneath us to the south. And the one we're looking at on Thursday is just another example. There could be, south of Dover, Delaware. I know Delaware weather guy is on the chat board, and I think you'll get accumulating snow south of Dover and down toward the lower end of the Delmarva, eastern sections of Virginia, Norfolk, Virginia, for example, Accomack. Those are places that are going to get bombed with, I think, at least 6 to 12 inches of snow. Now, all of you, I could just see the tears welling up in all of the tri-state area snow lovers, but that's the way it goes. You want your snow? Get in the car and travel about 7 or 8 hours south of here, and you'll get it. But you're not going to get it here. It looks like.
By the way, I don't know if you saw Tony Gigi's post today, but I'm going to bring it up on the screen. So he's decided, and I think this is real genius. And by the way, the 72, 70 winter, 73 winter is on this list. So I bet you if we looked at the New York City numbers for these years, they would match up pretty well. But this is what he said: worst winter in my lifetime ever. The combination of cold, lack of snow, and the forever never failed to materialize windy days has stunk to high heaven. It is going to be cold. It might as well, if it's going to be cold, it might as well, uh, no, well, not this winter. Anyway, the snow side of the house is not finally even with Thursday's event, literally and figuratively going south. We'd still have the rest of the month in March, but for now we stand this is for Philadelphia now. We stand in the top five of the useless cold winters. Okay.
I love that.
And
Useless,
all right.
useless winters.
So number five, Joe, on the list is Philadelphia, 72, 73. An average December, January, February temperature of 36, which is probably close to normal or, close to average for them. No snow, zero. Not a flake, not an ice pellet, nothing. Okay. So think about that, folks. 1937-38, average temperature 35.7, 8.3 inches. 50, 51, 35.5, 4.6 inches. 1888, 1889, 35.1, 6.2 inches. Now, this winter, 24-25 ranks number three among the top five uh, useless cold winters. Average temperature of 34.6 and 8 inches of snow so far for Philadelphia. 1941-42 is number two at 33.2 and 9.8. And 1958-59, 31.4, 5.9. The takeaway from this, folks, this has happened before. It will happen again. Okay, that's how weather works. Just remember that. Oh, seriously, I mean, this kind of sets the tone here for, this really says it as far as the kind of winter we've had. It's all this cold, and I think the numbers for New York are going to be much, it's going to be lower than these. But it goes to show you that you can have all the cold air in the world and still wind up with very little snow. And I'm sure you could find winters on the other side of the equation that were on the warm side of normal, where you got above normal snowfall.
Yes, we discussed this on a few occasions where, you know, even we had some months that were above normal. They say warmer than or milder than normal, and yet those same months had also big snowfalls. So it doesn't always work out that, mild does not bring snow. Sometimes it does, and sometimes you have the cold air, and sometimes you don't get any snow.
Yeah. Now I brought up the NAM upper air again because it continues to show a slightly different 500 millibar setup. It's got a well-defined upper low that forms in Iowa and then crosses into southern Ohio and then into southeast Pennsylvania, moves over New Jersey, and then moves offshore just south of Long Island. I mean, I think this is what the NAM is reacting to. But when you look at the global models, you do not have as well developed an upper low. In fact, on the GFS, it looks like it's going to get there, and then it actually weakens as it approaches the coast and broadens out. So, again, as I said earlier in the show, if there's going to be if something happens on Thursday, it's going to have to be from produced by that upper low, and that maybe you get some nuisance snow showers from that in the really cold air that's going to be around. But other than that, I can't see how you're going to bring up this system up from the south. The flow is more west southwest than it was yesterday, which is why the models, the GFS, the European, the Icon, show a low that's even further south. I mean, the snow can't even make it up to Cape May on the GFS and on the European, and out it goes. And I may there's actually some snow on the northern part of this on Wednesday as the low moves across the Gulf, moves along just off the Gulf Coast. There's a little bit of snow there up in northern Mississippi, northern Alabama, and northern Georgia. So I might be lucky enough to maybe to get a coating to an inch. The bitter cold air sweeps down. That low's going to pull that cold air to the coast on Thursday. And then it starts to slowly go out. The model's trying to make something offshore again. No, but look, even if something does come up from early next week, there's really no cold air left. All the cold air by then is gone, and we're just going to kind of be in, I think, what sort of a bluish pattern. Uh, there are some divers with weather fronts that are going to be coming through on the GFS. There's something here around the end of the month. There's something behind it after that. Who knows how much of this is real? There's another cold high that's forecast to move southward into the Great Lakes when we get to the latter part of the forecast period. And then there's something that comes out of Texas. And again, this is so far down the road. Uh, if we didn't learn one lesson from the last 5 or 6 days, is to make sure that when you look at the long range stuff, folks, especially beyond 7 or 8 days, you gotta recognize what the general pattern is that you can take away from this. But you can make a fairly good guess at what the very broad pattern is going to be like over the next week or 2 weeks. But in terms of specifics, after about the fifth or sixth day, you know, you're just really wasting your time.
David Scott on the chat board asking me, will New York City finish the weekend below normal in terms of average high temperature? David, I guess you weren't on at the very start of the show when I made the allusion to the fact that this is going to be a very cold week overall, but by Friday, we'll get above freezing probably, and by the weekend, it looks like temperatures are going to climb through the 30s up into the low and maybe mid 40s by Sunday and Monday of next week, and low to mid 40s, at least in the lower Hudson Valley. The normal temperature at this time of the year is around 41, 42. So we will be back near or maybe slightly above normal, at least in terms of high temperatures, by the time we get to Sunday and Monday. So all of that cold air, which a couple of people have said, oh, the cold air is going to waste or whatever, So all that cold air we're going to have to deal with this week, and by the time we get to the end of this weekend and the start of the new week next week, we'll be back to near or even above normal. And as I mentioned also at the beginning of the show, uh, time is flying really rapidly now because this weekend is the last weekend of February, and we'll soon be talking about the month of March, and soon we'll be talking about the end of winter.
Right.
And I don't want to depress all the winter weather lovers out there, but that's the way things are going so far.
Well, the CFS, the climate model, which has been not very good for the last at all. It missed, it missed in its forecast for January. It missed in its forecast for February. And what it's been doing is that it's been, forecasted a warm January until about mid-December, and then it flipped. It was forecasting a warm February until about early February, and then it flipped. And now it's kind of locked into this idea that the pattern looks to stay overall cold uh, through the middle of March, and then after that, it warms up. Now, it remains to be seen whether that's correct or not. I think the winter all along has been a battle between uh, the teleconnections uh, and the polar vortex. And the polar vortex to me has really kind of ruled most of this winter, among other things. And the fact that, the La Nina was really not a player at all, but to an extent. Now, there's a couple of things happening with the polar vortex. We've been in this, you know, stretching, not stretching, stretching, not stretching. And we're in this sort of stretch mode. Now, a model's been forecasting the polar vortex to kind of pull up toward, in the stratosphere, to pull up toward Siberia and put us underneath a big high in the stratosphere as we move into the month of March. Now, I'm not sure uh, this particular sequence tends to be volatile. So sometimes it'll show this for many, many days, and then all of a sudden it'll do something else. So you can make the case that if this is correct, that maybe we will warm up when we get into the month of March. On the other hand, if you look at um, the Madden-Julian oscillation, the MJO, it looks like we're going to be in the cold phases for the next 2 weeks at least, if not longer. So uh, I don't know which one of these is going to dominate, but I can say at least that after this weekend, it does look like it's not that we're going to warm up substantially. We're going to warm up somewhat and maybe go a little bit above normal, but there will be a bit of an absence of cold air from Canada for, like real cold air, like what we're seeing this week. So there may be an absence of that for a little while. So there you have it. That's my never
There
to
you
be
go.
humble opinion,
Yes.
because it always is never humble.
Well, the way things turn out, or seemingly has been turning out for people who want, the cold weather and the winter weather. Who knows? We last year we had the two biggest snowfalls in the Northeast during the final days of March and the beginning of April. So who's to say, that we might get abnormally cold and maybe get another shot at some significant snow at the end of March or early April this year? We'll see.
Now, just to torture you, I have the new SREF, Le Plumes, and Joe. They've actually been going up. So there's that.
Yeah, but
Um,
doesn't I found that the SREF seems to side a lot with the NAM. Is that
yes,
my imagination, or is
yes.
that?
Oh no, you're right. I'm just putting it out there, okay? And I'm not buying. I'm not forecasting this. You read my forecast that I wrote up. This is not. I'm not looking at this. But they've got 3, 4 inches up in central and South Jersey, and a couple of inches to almost a couple of inches to New York City and Long Island and southeastern New England. Just putting it out there. It's at least that if it does wind up snowing on Thursday, Joe, we can say that we put it out there.
Yes.
But no, I don't understand why those models are doing what they're doing. I just don't.
Well, I know. You just said to torture us.
There should have been a Perry Mason episode called "The Case of the Notorious Nam." Anyhow, you have Briller Jeopardy tonight?
I could just see Paul Drake, making the comment, Perry, this doesn't look right to me.
Fine.
And of course, Paul Drake would always be on the phone. Yes, I do have Briller Jeopardy, and I will be getting it for you in just a very short few moments here. And we will proceed. By the way, while I'm getting Briller Jeopardy set up, our dear friend on the chat board, Dennis Cassia, really, really has gone through the ringer over the last 24 hours. We speak about the lack of any snow. We had a lot more in the way of ice late Saturday night into Sunday. And Dennis yesterday contacted me and said, you have terrible ice here, major power outages. Battery on generator was dead. And he said, shame on me. Fortunately, it started with the hand crank, but the power went out here 7 o'clock in the morning yesterday. And they ran the generator at his house to heat the house up. And then, being a firefighter, he said, I'm heading for the firehouse. Now, today, he said, I'm very lucky that the retired fire chief has a salt truck. He said the ice was still unbelievable, still over 600. Now, he sent this to me at 6:57 this evening, a little over an hour ago. Still over 600 people without power. I can't even imagine not having power, or maybe not even having a generator to heat the house up, and all that wind going on out there with the cold weather. He says, we're lucky we got our power back yesterday and internet today at 4 o'clock. We don't need any more ice, more of these ice storms. He said, thankfully, the retired fire chief salted his driveway. Generator's still hooked up just in case. And, in situations like this, yeah, you never know, Dennis. You never know. So he's had his fair share of winter concerns and problems over these last 24 to 36 hours. Anyway, Briller Jeopardy tonight. And on this Briller Jeopardy, we are still on snowfall, average snowfall in February, Joe. So our first city for average snowfall in February is Seattle.
Seattle for February?
Yes.
2 inches. Ding-a-ling-a-ling.
You got it.
By the way, Anthony Orr and Joseph Pan, thank you both for hitting the tip jar tonight. Most appreciated. What's next?
Next one is St. Louis.
St.
Emma!
Louis.
Emma!
I will say for St. Louis, I will say 6.
Oh, so close, Joe. However, Harold Olson. Harold, you get a bell ring. You got it right on the nose. 5 inches.
5.
Now here, I got to grin when I look at this next city. I grin because, well, what may happen on Thursday for them doesn't necessarily reflect what is normal for the month of February. Virginia Beach.
Virginia Beach for.
Ruben wants to know, by the way, when I said St. Louis, I said, St. Louis, Emma. I'll explain that in a moment.
Right.
Virginia Beach.
I'll say 2 inches.
Where's the bell? 2 inches for Virginia Beach. Average February snowfall. Absolutely correct. Even though this coming Thursday, if everything falls into place, Virginia Beach could end up with 12 inches. But that's, one of those weird anomalies. What else can I say? How about the nation's capital, Washington, D.C.?
Washington, D.C. I'm guessing that's national. I'll say, hmm, either 4 or 5. I'll say 4.
You should have said 5.
5.
5 inches. Frank Scalera got it. Carol DeChura, you got it too. Chuck Cardillo, 5. So there you go. Last, well, not the last one because we also have a bonus. Sault Ste. Marie. Oh, wait a
Oh
minute.
God.
Excuse me. Scratch that. I don't know why. Scott said the first thing that I hit my eye was Sault. And I said, oh, Sault Ste. Marie. No, he spelled it Salt Lake City, but he had Sioux in front of
Oh,
the
okay.
lake.
Salt
Salt Lake
Lake
City.
City. When we go in those western states, I don't know. The West is hard because some places are in shadow areas and some places aren't. I know Salt Lake City does pretty well. I assume it's a double-digit number.
Yes,
So I'll say 20.
that's the double digit number, but it's way too high for a
It is
double
way
digit.
too high. Yeah, I see. I wasn't sure where to go with this.
We do have a winner already on the chat board, but
And the winner is?
Frank R. He has 11.
Oh, okay.
Frank Scalera right behind him with 12, as is the case with Latex Streams. Adam Lowe had 11. Chuck Cardillo had 11. And now, here is the bonus. The bonus city is Portland, Maine. Not Portland, Oregon. We already did Seattle. That would have been a good hint for Portland,
Right.
Oregon.
Portland, Maine. Uh, Try to remember Boston, what their normal is, because it's probably going to be close. I'll say 16.
Close again, Joe. But in state country. And William Huber also said 16.
And Maggie P said 18. And Frank R said 15.
You're
And Mike
dancing.
Waterhouse Bonsai at 17.
There you go. There you go. 17 inches. 17 inches in Portland, Maine, for the average
Well,
snowfall in the
I
month of
got
February.
I got 2 bell rings, which is good.
Yes. Well, we also had a number of people. Mike Waterhouse Bonsai said 17. Vincent Croce said 17. David Fuller 17. Excuse me. David Fuller said 18. Chuck Cardillo said 17. So there you go. And
Okay.
and just my explanation about St. Louis, Emma. If you this they don't do it anymore. Now they run trailers. But back in the day when they ran cartoons in front of the movie that you went to see, they must have done this back to back. There was one cartoon with Yosemite Sam where he was trying to woo Granny, the same Granny I think that had Tweety. Apparently, Yosemite Sam found out that she had a lot of money, and so he's trying to get her to marry him or get her money or whatever. Didn't work, and every time he tried to get her to say yes, I forgot the reason, but he kept getting blown up or shot at or whatever like that, and ultimately he did not succeed. And then the next cartoon that he appeared in was with Bugs Bunny, where they were running for mayor. And at one point in that cartoon, he tried to get Bugs to pick up the phone, and if Bugs picked it up, it would be like you would get shot at or get blown up on. And so the phone rings, and Yosemite says to Bugs Bunny, says, "Hey, Rabbit, I think that phone call is for you." And he goes to pick up the phone. He comes back and he said, "I think this one is for you, Sam. She said St. Louis." And he said, "St. Louis, Emma!" And that's obviously the name of the woman who had all the money and lived in St. Louis in the previous cartoon. You had to see both cartoons back to back to understand. And of course, when Yosemite Sam picked up the phone, boom, he got blown up. Anyway, a long story for a short for a short anecdote. And I was running it long so I could see whether or not we could get to 200 likes here. But
We got too many. It's at 27, but we're only got need 16 more subscribers to get to 15,000. So if you're lurking in the background and you haven't subscribed, uh, by all means, hit the subscribe button. That's why you don't miss us because we're here Sunday through Thursday at 7:35 p.m. and the occasional Friday and Saturday when there's a storm around. So on
may I
that
also,
note,
may I also make a prediction, which I think you are going to like.
and that is
My prediction is now here we are. It's the 17th of February, Washington's birthday, a Monday holiday. Coming up soon in another couple of weeks, we're going to have to make the transition back to daylight saving time. And here's my prediction, Joe. I'm going to predict that the president is going to have an executive order, and he has already said that he is going to get rid of our pushing the clocks forward. That he is. My prediction is that he's going to write an executive order up abolishing daylight saving time, and that we will stay on standard time. And if that be the case, you and I will be very happy because then
yes, we would.
we stay on standard time. We get our data at the time that we're getting it now, and not having to wait an extra hour when we go on daylight saving time. But so far, we've seen in this administration so many things happening all at once with the stroke of a pen. And this is what he has promised. He's promised that he's going to abolish daylight saving time. So I'm going to predict that, let's say, like 2 or 3 days before it's time to move the clocks forward, he's just going to get out his pen. He's going to say, no more daylight saving time, whether or not that's legal or
works for me. I don't care. Works for me. I abhor that. There's no reason for it. There is no rhyme or reason for it. It's the same amount of daylight. It's the same amount of nighttime, no matter what. Okay, you don't gain anything. You don't lose anything. It's the same. So it's just. The whole nation of China runs on one time zone. So
Yes.
yeah, it's all it's all how it was ingrained
Don't
in
say
us.
that too loud, Joe. Don't say that too loud because the people in Washington hear that, and a few of them might actually say, "Hey, that's a good idea.
Well, let's go to
Why
one
not have
time
a
zone.
whole-
Well,
one
look,
time
it
for the
does
whole
to me.
United States?"
Yeah, but you know what?
Nothing would surprise me. Nothing would surprise me anymore.
It doesn't
Yeah.
matter. We're on standard time. Just leave it alone. There's no reason to go an hour ahead and then go back the other way in the beginning of November. It doesn't. No, there's no reason. By the way, when's Easter this year? Is it
Easter is
early?
on, Easter is April the 20th.
Oh, it's late. Okay.
And an interesting little short story to that is Easter is always the first Sunday after the first full moon of spring.
Right.
Now, the first full moon of spring this year is on April the 12th. So
Right.
that's Saturday. Saturday, April 12th is the first full moon of spring. So you say, "Oh, well then according to the rule, we have to have Easter the next day, which would be April 13th." No. Why? Because here in the United States, here in the Eastern time zone, the moon turns full at 8 p.m. on April the 12th, Saturday, April the 12th. But across the big pond in Europe, and most notably at the Vatican, full moon is after midnight on
Right.
Sunday,
It's
April
two.
13th.
I think it's 6 hours. It's a six
And
hour
so,
difference.
and so as a result, since the full moon occurs on Sunday in Europe and in the Vatican, they say, okay, so according to the rules, next Sunday is Easter, and that's why Easter gets delayed by 8 days, not because we have the full moon on Saturday, but because they have the full moon on Sunday, and they have to wait another week for Easter to be there. That's almost as late as it possibly can come. Easter, I believe, can come as late as April the 25th. That will happen in the year 2037. But for those of you who don't want to wait until 2037, you've got this year, which is going to be a very late Easter, April the 20th.
And I think the Catholic Easter and the Orthodox Easter is the same Sunday this year.
And there you go.
I think. I think. I remember hearing that somewhere.
I would have thought
Okay.
my Easter, I would have thought my Easter story would have gotten at least 20 more likes and get us to 200, but I guess that's not going to work. Oh
No,
well.
I don't think it is. I think we should say goodnight. So
All
everybody
right.
was. We'll see you tomorrow night. I hope everybody had a great day. Be safe tonight. Stay warm in the wind and the cold. And see you tomorrow. Bye bye.
Goodbye, folks.